Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. This is Gemini Brett. Today is Sunday, the day of the sun, March 29th, 2020. I'm reporting from shelter in place, though I somewhat hesitate to repeat such double speak. But I want to speak about this Aries new moon that aligned last week to begin a lunation that, of course, we are in for about 29 and a half days. This will be, I guess, the longest lunation of the year, most likely. There's a few dynamics that go into that I think maybe we'll get to today. And maybe even at the end, I'll ask you to join me for a little astrological or astronomical research, and we'll see how often such a thing like this occurs. So what do I mean by a thing like this? I mean, Aries new moon is every year. But I want to bring you into some kind of esoteric images that we see regarding the moon here expressed by the chart if we know how to tune into the sacred astronomy of the thing. The general philosophy of sacred astronomy is that astrology is so much more than some symbolic language alone. Astrology is the poetic breath of nature, and that when we renature our astrology, we will remember the roots of the rules and the proofs of the astrological equations we use. So these charts are such amazing models and maps that speak to us about individual and collective soul path. But we have to also remember, first and foremost, they are models and maps of the sky. And when we can reconnect the chart and the sky and the sky and the chart, we learn to see things in the chart in like very intimately and sensually in an embodied way that help us as astrologers. And when I say astrologer, I simply mean one who travels with the planets, and stays conscious of the planetary motions. I don't mean people who are doing this professionally, or even specifically, those who are engaging with the active narration of the celestial conversation. I mean, if you follow the planets and you are an astrologer, if you follow the planets and know that they also follow you and that we dance together, yeah? So the general philosophy of sacred astronomy, and why this is the principal devotion of my own work, is that when we can re-engage with the sky itself, we will learn directly. And this is how the ancients, I must believe, were participating with the marriage of heaven and earth in such a way that they started holding the keys to these mysteries and formulating the equations, and the rules of this high science we call astrology that bridges the quantity of the heavenly happenings, the measurable, the astronomy, with the immeasurable, the qualities, the correspondences. So new moons are a syzygy of the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world. This is the mudra of Mercury, the planet, that we associate with Hermes, and perhaps even Hermes Trismegistus, who tells us in her emerald tablets that hence I am called Hermes Trismegistus, having the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world. That which I have said of the operation of the sun is accomplished and ended. Those same tablets begin, "'Tis true without lying, certain and most true, that which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to do the miracles of one only thing." These emerald tablets of Hermes really are at the root of my own, spiritual cosmology and practice, and help lead my experience with the sky in such a way that that experience can find its way eventually into words, so I can share what I'm experiencing there. But the truth is, I also never can. So, the greatest thing that I can do is invite everyone to have their own sky practice, because you're going to see things in the heavens from Earth in a very unique way, in a very different way than I can. And then this will allow you to contribute your own unique keys to the mysteries. So syzygy is this wonderful word that speaks to the alignment of three things. And when I say the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world, I share them in a few ways. We learn the circle of spirit and the crescent of soul and the cross of matter are the elements that compose the glyphs that we use to depict the planets in modern times. Spirit, soul, and matter. We can also look at these and see sun, moon, and earth. Well, earth is the cross of matter inside the circle of spirit, which is a very important teaching. So, of course, every new moon, which is from Earth's point of view, the alignment of moon and sun, right? The alignment of these three things, earth, moon, sun, matter, soul, and spirit, cross, crescent, circle. But not every new moon, we could say, is created equally in how we experience them in space, in time. So I want to ask Hermes now to speak to us of serpents and the caduceus staff. So the slithering of the snake. And I ask astrologers and those who are familiar with the glyphs of the charts to just look at the shape of this rhythm, of this movement, and see if that body of the serpent speaks to you of any glyphs that you know. Ketu, Rahu, right? The south and north lunar nodes, these symbols that we use to depict what? The symbol we use for the south lunar node, it actually used to be the one that was used for the north node, the dragon's head, which kind of makes some sense when you see here that that glyph comes to us from the hood of the king cobra. So why was so much serpent and snake and dragon symbolism with the moons and her nodes? Because every month the moon snakes above and below the path of the sun. Not to scale. And thanks to my love, Anna Zaharia, for helping me create this illustration. This is a general heliocentric idea of Earth orbiting sun and moon orbiting Earth. You know, the moon is 3/11 the size of Earth by diameter. Certainly not that ratio in mass, but a better image than moon about Earth and Earth about sun is that the two are kind of performing a mutual choreography and weaving about one another as they mutually dance about the light. But if we use this model, that's okay, right? The ecliptic, shown here in yellow, and you'll see it's called Earth's orbit, or the circle of spirit. Why do I call it that? Well, that we'll get back to because it's more of a geocentric or Earth-centered experience. But here in the heliocentric or sun-centered model, Earth orbiting the sun in a year, and moon orbiting Earth in a month. And every month we have the phases, right? Which is Earth, Moon, Sun, new moon, or moon, Earth, Sun, full moon. We're looking here at an illustration of about a third quarter moon, the waning half moon. So every month we have a month created of phases, which is called the synodic month. Synod means meeting. In this case, we're talking about the meeting of moon and sun from Earth's point of view. New moon, yeah. But there are many types of moons, many types of months, and one is called the draconic month, the dragon month, which speaks to moon and these nodes. Because every month moon, whose course, which I like to call the circle of soul, is not parallel to the course of Earth. This means that every month the moon will be seen snaking above and below the Earth's plane, or the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship, which is what we call the ecliptic. I think this is easier actually to see from a geocentric model. Why? Because we live on Earth and we're experiencing the heavens from Earth. So most of the charts that we astrologers utilize are geocentric, are Earth-centered charts. Shouldn't we be centered in the Earth? Here we are, the most important planet, you know, the one that you chose, the one that chose you. Cheers. So here's a geocentric, Earth-centered model. Yeah, certainly not to scale, right? I mean, this is showing moon and sun the same distance from Earth, which of course is not true. The sun is 400 times further away than the moon, and 400 times bigger. And this creates this amazing experience where on Earth, moon and sun seem to be the same size in our sky. And for this reason, we can experience the amazement of the moon occulting the sun for a total solar eclipse, which happens at a new moon, right? Earth, moon, sun, but not at every new moon. Why? Because the circle of soul, moon's path, is not parallel to the circle of spirit, sun's path. That circle of spirit, the ecliptic, okay, interestingly, you can hear the word eclipse in that, yeah? The ecliptic really is the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship. I'll go back. So whether we're thinking about Earth orbiting the sun, right? Or sun orbiting the Earth, which is what's happening from our point of view, right? The sun gets through our zodiac in a year. We're speaking of a plane of this dance, of this Earth-Sun, or I'll say matter-spirit relationship, and that's why I call it the circle of spirit. Well, moon snakes above and below that path every month. So in these circles of gold and silver, I mean, you can think of that golden circle, the sun's orbit of the Earth, if you will, to be the circle of the year, and that silver circle to be the circle of the month, or the month. And here in this illustration, and again, thanks to my love, Anna Zaharia, you can see our Gemini Brett and Scorpiana logo, our Arts of the Chart logo there at the bottom right. Here's an illustration of a new moon. From Earth's point of view, moon and sun are in the same degree of the zodiac, if you will. But this is not an image of a solar eclipse, is it? Solar eclipses, of course, happen at new moons because moon between Earth and sun can occult the light from our view. But not every month, right? Why? Because the paths of moon and paths of sun are not parallel. They have two crossing points, which are the lunar nodes, right? So in the new moon illustrated here, this would be moon in what's called northern latitude. Celestial latitude is a measurement north or south of the ecliptic. So when moon is in northern latitude, from Earth's point of view, she's either above or below the sun, depending on which hemisphere you're looking from. From the northern hemisphere, a north latitude moon appears to be above the sun in our sky. From the southern hemisphere, turn your head upside down for this illustration, the moon appears to be below the sun in the sky. Either way, from regardless of where you're looking from, no moon at all. I mean, typically a new moon is a no moon, no experience of the light. There's so many prophecies of 3 days of darkness, you know, and as far as the human or earthly experience of moonlight, this happens every month, right? The day before, the day of, the day after the conjunction with the sun. Typically, we cannot see the moon at all. Why? She is under the beams of the sun. She goes into the darkness from our point of view when she gets so close to the light. And she is most full when she is on the opposite side, the full moon, of course. Moon, earth, sun, that other alignment of the syzygy, from the other direction, you see. This is when we have the mirror of the moon fully reflecting sunlight to Earth, right? So just imagine moon, in this case, being over here and reflecting all that sunlight back to Earth, right? It's amazing that the sun is the one that, of course, illuminates the Earth when he rises in the morning. But when the sun rises, the stars go away. Sun illuminates the Earth, but hides the heavens. And when planets are so close to the sun, they're what's called under the beams or even combust. We cannot see them because they are blinded by the bright light. And of course, this is the case for the moon every month at new moon time. The only time we can see the moon during the conjunction with sun, during the synod, during their meeting, is when they meet close enough to either the south lunar node or the north lunar node. Because these are the points where the paths of the sun and the moon intersect from Earth's point of view. There's nothing actually there, right, in space. People will say they're like these imaginary points. Well, they're not imaginary. And in fact, if you learn to see the ecliptic in the sky, if you know the stars that are so tightly aligned to the sun's path as the planets typically are, and you can see the moon crossing above and below that path of the ecliptic every month. The south lunar node is where the moon crosses from north to south of the ecliptic. And the north lunar node, about a couple of weeks later, where the moon crosses from southern latitude to northern latitude. So here we're seeing an illustration of a new moon with the moon in northern latitude, no eclipse for you, right? No shadow play for you at that time. We have to have a new moon either at the south node or at the north node to experience a solar eclipse. And so we have 2 eclipse seasons a year that happen when the sun is either at the south node or about 6 months later when the sun is at the north node. And during those seasons, the new moons, regardless of whether moon and sun meet at the south node or the north node, and the full moons are respectively solar and lunar eclipses. Does that make sense? I mean, imagine if there was a full moon at this time, right? The moon would be over here in our diagram, opposite the sun. And here, no solar eclipse because the sun is projecting Earth's shadow always onto the ecliptic plane, exactly opposite where it is. And so, you know, if the moon was here at full moon with the sun in the same place in this illustration, Earth's shadow would be projected above the moon from the northern hemisphere's point of view, or below the moon from the southern hemisphere point of view. Either way, no shadow play for you. So the point of the things of these lunar nodes, these crossing points of the paths of spirit and soul of sun and moon, they host eclipses on the ecliptic. And this Aries new moon was very far from that. Well, let's tune into this mythically a bit. All around the world, we experience myths of eclipses. There were holding and conveying this experiential scientific wisdom called astrology, relating eclipse happenings to serpents, to dragons. In India, the great tale of Rahu, who was cut in half to the head of the dragon and the tail of the dragon. And during an eclipse, Rahu, the head, or Ketu, the tail, seek their revenge against Surya and Chandra, the sun and the moon, who in some ways were responsible for the decapitation. So Rahu eats the sun, but he's been decapitated, so the sun is reborn shortly after Rahu's neck. Bacanawa is a dragon in the Philippine mythos who eats the moon during the lunar eclipse. Serpents and dragons and the moon and the sun all throughout time and culture. Why? Because every month the moon snakes above and below the path of the sun. Many have said that we don't have these dragon eclipse myths from the Western or Greco-Roman tradition, and that's untrue. So here we see an alchemical woodcut tuning us in to one of the great serpent stories of the moon and the sun. This is the sun on the left and the moon on the right. Yeah. Apollo and Diana, or Helios and Artemis, who aren't typically shown with clubs. Here we see them clubbing a dragon, right? Usually we see them with their bows, as you see them in the background. Here's an image of the story of these twins, Apollo and Diana, the sun and the moon. Now, Diana's bow is something we see every month, and it's a tale of faith. So here's a photo I took from Berkeley of one some months ago. Behind me, the one recently, which is the day after the new moon, the conjunction, right? Which really, again, unless it's an eclipse and you're in a place on Earth where you're experiencing that shadow, a new moon, the meeting of moon and sun, the conjunction really is a no moon. So the ancients who celebrated new moons to begin months and calendars tuned to this great cycle of moon and sun, like the Babylonian calendar, which is preserved by the Hebrew calendar today, or the Chinese calendar. There's many lunar calendars. I mean, the Hebrew calendar, traditionally did not begin months with the conjunction of moon and sun, but rather with the visible rebirthing of the moon in the western sky. And this culture began days at sunset. Why? Because you have to wait for the new moon to show herself in the sunset sky. So if you're keeping a calendar of months that begins after sunset, that's when your days will begin, you see. And dig also that this is a culture that celebrates New Year, Rosh Hashanah, around autumnal equinox, which is the sunset of the year, right? Spring is like sunrise, summer like midday, autumn like sunset. Because of this, right? Because this is the true new moon. This is when the ram's horn is blown, and there's an announcement that she survived her journey through the light, that time where every month is composted, yeah. And so at this time we find Diana's bow, the crescent moon, Diana, firing arrows at her brother Apollo, the sun who was just set below. It's such a powerful phase of the moon, this young moon, where we see so much what's called earth shine, as you can see in this photo here, right? It's a crescent moon, which will always be pointed exactly towards the sun, right? Diana's bow is always aiming arrows at the light because the moon is a mirror, right? The moon delivers the sun to earth. So you may know that Diana, Artemis, is the goddess of midwives and births. We'll soon speak about her first gig. But dig that you also see the rest of the moon here, right? And it's an amazing experience to see with our eyes. That's called earth shine. Because while the crescent illuminated is sunlight reflected from the moon to earth, the rest that we see is sun, earth, moon, earth. Earth light, which of course is also the reflection of sunlight being reflected off of the moon's surface back to earth. So if you feel into this truth, it's a beautiful thing. The crescent here is sun, moon, earth. And the rest of the moon that we see, the Earth shine, is Sun, Earth, Moon, Earth. It's literally older than the crescent light. And there's something really deep there. So again, to like tune into this approach that I call sacred astronomy, right? Which is getting out, celebrating these things, experiencing these things, ceremoniously participating with this mystery of the sky and the earth, and saying, huh, that's weird. Why do I see the rest of the moon? You know, what's that about? Why did the moon set there? Why does the sky show me the colors of the rainbow in reverse, or the chakras with the red at the root? You know, so much happens when we get out in nature, whether by night or by day. We get to learn from the heavenly teachings and the earthly teachings. Okay, Diana, goddess of midwives, the moon who delivers sunlight to earth. And such was the case with Apollo's birth. So I'll bring a dragon onto the scene here. Their mother was Latona in the Latin, right? So Apollo, Diana were the children, the twins of Latona, or in the Greek, Helios, Artemis were the twins of Leto. And their father was Zeus, or Jupiter, whose wife, Hera, or Juno, was not so happy that another woman was bearing her husband's child. So Leto was chased out of town by this dragon, this serpent that Hera conjured up, Typhon, who used to run the oracle at Delphi, Apollo's oracle, Helios's oracle. It's hard not to mix the Greco-Roman, Greek and Latin languages here. So please excuse me for this. This dragon, Typhon, chased the pregnant Leto, Latona, out of town, chased her away from midwives, taking her away from the opportunity to have a calm and safe birth. The sun and the moon were born from this tragedy, their mother on the run from a dragon, see. But with some protection, she found her way to a place to safely give birth to the first, who was Diana. We're told the moon was born before the sun in this myth, which is an interesting trip. Certainly does not agree with modern astrophysic cosmology. But one thing in this story certainly does, the truth that we can all see, is that moon delivers sun to earth. So shortly after Diana, Artemis, was born, she performed her first midwife gig. She delivered her brother Apollo, Helios, who later in life, once he had grown and developed skills with this bow, fired an arrow right through that dragon that had chased their mother, their pregnant mother, around, and claimed the Delphic oracle for his own. Still an oracle associated with dragons and serpents. So here we look at a new moon aligning to one of these serpent points, to a lunar node. How do we know? Because solar eclipse, and in this case, total solar eclipse, where we see only the corona of the sun, the crown of the sun. An interesting word, corona, at this time of my recording, where, you know, so much fear and so much shadow in regards to the coronavirus. And here we are, isolated, which I really want to speak about, because we can hear that song sung by the Sacred Astronomy of this new moon that has just aligned. And the first outbreak of the coronavirus that we know of was so strongly aligned to the last solar eclipse that we've experienced. That was December 26th, 2019, in the sign of Capricorn, where the south lunar node now lives. So when moon and sun met close enough to that south lunar node, and they did so with Jupiter on December 26, 2019, in the early degrees of Capricorn. It was December 25th. It was a Christmas eclipse here in California, nighttime. Nighttime, so it wasn't seen. It's actually, in fact, midday, and therefore most visible around Wuhan, China, where the first known coronavirus case broke out around that time in December 2019. And here we are a few months later. So we see this corona of the sun when moon occults the solar disk, when the two align for a total solar eclipse. The eclipse in December 2019 was an annular solar eclipse where the moon does not occult the entire sun disk, not because the three parts, the earth, moon, and sun, aren't exactly aligned or so strongly aligned where a total solar eclipse could occur. In fact, that was the case in December, but because the moon was too far from Earth to be seen as the same size as the sun. So I mentioned earlier that while sun is 400 times larger than the moon by diameter, it is also 400 times further from the Earth. And so we experience this opportunity of the total occultation, the total solar eclipse, because moon and sun appear to be the same size in our sky. Sometimes, because orbits, my friends, are not circles, but rather ellipses. We'll get back to that. But let's get back to Apollo's bow. Do you see it here? Well, we see Diana's bow, the waxing crescent moon, the young moon every month, or Hecate's bow, the waning crescent moon, the old moon on the other side, when moon is getting ready to journey into the darkness to be composted during the syzygy. We see Apollo's bow only in these times of solar eclipse. And amazingly, we get to see during the course of the eclipse, if you're in a place where you see the eclipse forming, with the moon applying to the sun from the west to the east, and then also separating, you get to see Apollo's bow in both shapes, you know, like a waxing or a waning bow of the sun, the solar bow, which only comes to us at eclipse times, which only come to us when the moon and the sun meet close to one of the nodes, these dragon points. So Apollo bow, right? The crescent sun, and Apollo shooting an arrow into this dragon is certainly one of the great myths that is conveying the sacred astronomy of this. Apollo's arrow is that syzygy of the three parts, earth, moon, and sun, matter, soul, and spirit. And that arrow is happening in every moment through the lunar nodes in the heart of the earth, the nodes being these places where the paths of moon and sun intersect. Yeah. And when the moon and sun meet near the arrow, solar eclipse at new moon or lunar eclipse at full moon. So this is one of the serpents of Mercury's staff, a caduceus. I'll show you the other one another time. Let's look at the eclipse to come in about 3 months. which I have spoken of, and you can see a 3.5-hour video I recorded in January of this year at GeminiBrett.com. Go to the free teachings page and check out 2020 Revelations, where I, like so many other astrologers, were saying, wow, this year 2020 is for real. And many of us are tuning into the power of Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto traveling together. This year began, if you like to begin your years in January, with the 3 in Capricorn tightly aligned, and they're dancing together all year long. And this has been, in the main focus of astrologers for years now. We've all been saying 2020 is something's going to happen. But I will say this June solstice solar eclipse is literally the most powerful astronomical and therefore astrological gateway of our lifetimes. And then I will always follow that up, except for the one that aligned in the same degree of the zodiac and in 2001. But that this is a gateway. There's a sacred alignment, the greatest alignment astronomically that we are all participating with in this incarnation at a powerful time that opened, I'll say, in about 1975 and closes in 2025. That doesn't mean it ends, but that there's very powerful points of eclipses in 1982 and 2001 and 2020, these times that are also all related through the dance of Saturn and Pluto. And in the early 80s of Jupiter and Saturn, and Jupiter and Pluto too. More about that another time, but for now, let's look to some expressions of this solar eclipse chart that not all chart that are esoteric, I guess. So what do we see? I mean, we see this new moon and sun in the same degree, right? Syzygy. So Earth is the center of the chart, the cross of matter inside the circle of spirit being the path of the sun, the ecliptic, the zodiac, where we project all of the planets to live, and the Earth, the cross of matter in the center. So it's hard to see this here because we don't offer in our models like distances, but this is Earth, moon, sun, and they're meeting so close in this case to the North Lunar Node, to that crossing point of the paths of moon and sun from Earth's point of view, that this is definitely an eclipse shadow play for you at this time, depending where on Earth you reside. And maybe later I'll actually show a slide of where this eclipse will be seen, which frankly is the Middle East. Okay. So here we see that moon and sun so closely aligned to Rahu, to the dragon's head, to the North Lunar Node. And this means solar eclipse. And look how close, okay? It's a 1 degree, right? From 29 to 0 and 14 arc minutes. That's a very close alignment of a new moon and a node. So total solar eclipse, right? Not necessarily. These eclipse limits are really great to know. And for the alignment of a new moon, if they meet within 10 degrees, really 9 degrees and 55 arc minutes of either north or south lunar node, this means either a total solar eclipse or an annular solar eclipse. Whereas within this range, a partial eclipse, though it may be total, within this range, a partial, definitely not total, but every time a partial, seen somewhere on Earth. And then it might be partial with the moon and the sun, up to 18.5 degrees away from the nodes, which means they don't have to be in the same sign. I mean, look here, right? Here we have an alignment 1 degree and 14 arc minutes from the node, but in this case, the North Lunar Node is in the tropical sign of Gemini. The nodes, which travel in about 18.618 years retrograde around the zodiac, will shift from where they've been for about a year and a half, North Node in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn, to North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius, as we see here. That shift happens in May of this year of 2020, and we will feel a significant shift then. I mean, feel into now with the North Node in Cancer, and we're all being directed to tune in to home and family. And yet I'm also here to share with you where, while there's these global and family-based things happening, we could say tribal, you know, Capricorn, Cancer, lunar nodes, that's where we're at now, the dragon's arrow. We're also going to see some importance of this month, especially reminding us of the strength of self and the pain of that in isolation sometimes, and ask, what is this thing called independence? So because a solar eclipse can happen with the nodes within like literally up to 18 degrees, or a lunar eclipse within about 12 degrees of the either node, that does not mean that the solar eclipse or the lunar eclipse will always be in the same signs where the nodes reside, as we can see very clearly here, right? Okay. So this one's so close to the nodes, but not total, annular. Why? And how do we see this? Because what I see here is the eclipse, because the new moon is close to a node, in this case, so close. Why isn't that total? And I have to bring another point onto the scene. And this is true black moon Lilith. So what is Lilith? This illustration is certainly not to scale, an extreme exaggeration of a truth that eclipses, orbits are not circular, they are elliptical. Yeah, no orbit is circular. Ellipses. And ellipses don't have one center, they have two foci, like wells of love. For the moon-Earth relationship, and we'll use this model of moon orbiting the Earth, one of these foci is within Earth's bounds, within her body. Not at Earth's center, which, by the way, causes some interesting wobbles in our dance. But anyway, one is within Earth's bound, and the other one is this dark point in space. There's nothing there visibly. There's nothing there in matter, in body, but there is something there. I like to say in love. The modern idea would be gravitationally. Some would suggest actually more electromagnetically. Either way, there are 2 points of the moon-Earth relationship in this dance, and one is within Earth's bounds, and the other one is this dark point in space that we astrologers, interestingly, have come to call Black Moon Lilith. This is the true Black Moon Lilith. Now, there's a dark moon Lilith, which is a different thing, which is the idea that Earth has a moon that we never see. There's an asteroid called Lilith. Some associate this great star, the Bohemian, the magical star Algol, with Lilith. But what I'm speaking about here is the point that we have come to call true Black Moon Lilith. Interestingly, and there's always a reason why these mythic connotations find their connections with planets, asteroids, moons, points like Lilith. Okay. What I'll share here first astronomically is this truth, that when we direct our gaze towards that energetic called Lilith out there in space, we are also directed towards what is called the lunar apogee. And that is where the moon is furthest from Earth in her monthly course. So let's speak about another type of month, okay? One, the synodic month, synod meaning meeting, the lunation. Earth, moon, sun, new moon, about 29.5 days separate each of those new moon alignments. 29.53059 days on average, new moon to new moon, or full moon to full moon. The synodic cycle, the cycle of the Earth-Sun meetings the moon-sun meetings from Earth's point of view. We talked about the draconic month, moon snaking above and below the path of the sun from Earth's point of view. So moon from the north node back to the north node. the dragon's head to the dragon's head, or the dragon's tail to the dragon's tail. That's the draconic month. It's about 27.5 days long, not exactly. Another cycle of about 27.5 days, a little bit longer, is called the animalistic month. I prefer to say month. And that's moon from like apogee, far point, back to the apogee, or from perigee, which means close to Earth, back to the perigee. So every month, less than 28 days, the moon is also doing this, getting very close to the Earth and getting far away. And when close, we've come to call this the supermoon. Bigger, like literally. In our sky, apparently 30% bigger with the moon at the perigee, supermoon, than the moon at the far point, the apogee, which some have come to call the micromoon. What's bigger mean? Brighter, literally bigger tides at those times. And faster, because closer to the source of love, right? So I like to call Black Moon Lilith Far Moon Lilith, because she directs our gaze to the lunar apogee, where the moon in her monthly course about the Earth is far away. Or I like to call her Small Moon Lilith, because that's where the moon is apparently smallest in our sky. Or Slow Moon Lilith, because when the moon is far from Earth, moon is moving slower through the zodiac. So we say that the moon travels about 13 1/3 degrees per day, which is the size of a nakshatra, of a lunar mansion, the average daily travel of the moon through the zodiac. But when moon is far from Earth, it can be like less than 12 degrees per day through the zodiac. And when super close, almost 16 degrees per day. So it's an important thing for us to learn as we increase our experience and our knowledge as astrologers, that we're so often playing with averages, and sometimes we get disconnected from nature by overdoing thought in like averages and cycles in that way, right? They're really important for us to know how things generally behave in these wheels within wheels within wheels. But if we want to tune into the intricacies and reclaim kind of the occult or the esoteric information, we want to release like our praise of the averages and start tuning in more to reality. And so dynamic. The speed of the moon is a great entrance point to that experience. The size of the moon, which are obviously intimately related, right? So if the moon is close to Earth at perigee, supermoon, bigger in our sky, can you see that that means the moon is much more likely to occult the entire sun disk? I mean, if this eclipse that we're considering, this June 2020 eclipse, June 20th, June solstice eclipse, was at perigee, was a supermoon, it would be a total solar eclipse, and a rather long one, because a big moon is going to eat the sun for a longer time, you see. But that's not the case for the eclipse to come. You can see, I hope, that if the moon's at the lunar apogee, far from Earth, and therefore smaller in the sky, even if the alignment is so strong, the three parts of the philosophy at the dragon's arrow, right, which is the case because the June solstice solar eclipse is a degree and 14 minutes from the node. I mean, they are right there at the intersection points of the paths of spirit and paths of soul from matter's point of view, of moon and sun from Earth. But it's a small moon, and it's not an entirely small moon, right? We see that when the moon's at Lilith, yeah, which directs us to the lunar apogee, where moon is far away from Earth. I'm here, it's square, which would be about the average lunar speed, right? So here's the apogee, Lilith to the apogee. Here's the perigee, opposite Lilith in the sky. So these points on the square, which aren't really, it's not so easy to see in this very exaggerated image of the ellipse, but this would be about moon's average distance from Earth, an average speed. And what we see is that even when the alignment is so close to a node, 1 degree and 14 arc minutes from the node, if the moon is an average distance from the Earth, she's still not large enough to occult the entire sun disk, because this June solstice 2020 solar eclipse will not be a total solar eclipse. It will be an annular solar eclipse where we still see the ring of fire. I'm not talking about the sun's corona, but actually solar disk around a smaller moon. And I mean, there's much power in that alignment, that syzygy, that ring of fire. So we had a ring of fire, an annular solar eclipse, December 25th or 26th, 2019, depending on where you reside and which time zone, in this weird agreement we've made with our clocks and Greenwich meridians and such. And we will have another annular solar eclipse, June 20th, 2020. 19 years before, in 2001, there was a total solar eclipse in the same place. And I don't say that that one was even more powerful because total is more powerful than annular, though I'm not saying that either, but because we were more centered at that point in this most powerful astronomical happening of our day and age, which is galactic alignment, which perfected in like 1999-ish. And that's a tale for another time, which you can drop into deeply if you watch my 2020 Revelations movie at GeminiBrett.com, and there'll be more about that to come. All right, so June solstice 2020 eclipse. This moment, which of course has not happened yet, and I don't want to have astrology as a way out, which happens when we future trip or past trip, right? I want astrology as a way in, which happens when we find the moment now, and when we think cyclically, and we release this idea that time is a line, we'll find that that cycle of time, that circle of time, that spiral of time, that torus of time can help bring us in. But it's a tricky thing to do. I'm not so great about it, right? I mean, I've been looking at this for years and excited and scared and wondering. And I don't want to be a fear monger in any way. I think that this is like a symbol of the great gateway of the significant change from a world we wish to leave behind for the birth of a new one. And may Diana, goddess of midwives, may the moon bless this rebirthing. And we're in a time of labor pain. And right now it's looking like this virus. And I imagine we're going to see some other very dominant themes come to light, to shine upon the shadow. So like an eclipse, we can bring a rebirth of the light from these dark times. Okay, let's rewind and bring this to now, okay? Aries new moon. Well, this isn't now because I'm speaking to you on Sunday, the day of the sun, March 29th, 2020 in Richmond, California. It's now, 11:06 a.m. local time. And I'm rewinding to this Tuesday, Mars's day, March 24th, 2020. Mars, who traditionally is associated with the great sign known as Aries, where moon and sun met. Now, it's the sun's Aries ingress at March equinox, when the sun, for the only moment every year, is due east of the center of Earth. This is where astrologers begin the year, most of us. Of course, it's not the Gregorian trip, which says January 1st, sometime between the sun's birth and the Epiphany, the 12th day of Christmas, right? And interestingly, just as we begin our days in the middle of the night, because that's when the sun begins its climb, in the Northern Hemisphere experience, we're beginning our Gregorian years in the middle of the night of the year, right? The longest night, winter solstice, shortly after the birth of the sun, sing a Christmas song, whatever, you know. But there's a point, where's an earth around here? Let's stop my share so this can be a little bit bigger on the camera. Gaia's spine, the sword of our stone, the world tree, Earth's axis, her pole of rotation, which in our day and age points to Polaris in the northern sky. And that changes with time. Story for another time. But regardless of when and where this axis, the spine, points in the heavens, it defines the directions north and south. And in every moment, forever, the north point leans in the tropical zodiac towards the cusp of Gemini and Cancer, the June solstice point for the sun. And the southern point leans towards the south point, the cusp of tropical Sagittarius and Capricorn. So given that that's north-south, there is also an east-west, okay? And I mean, east in California, where I am right now, is different. It's pointing somewhere else, and it's pointing for you in the heavens, wherever you sit. But there is an east from the center of Earth, from the heart, where we are all connected. And the east point is 0 degrees Aries. It's in that sense, the rising sign for all of us, which is why things like precession of the equinoxes work. Here we're looking west, of course, in this photo that I took of the visible new moon on March 25th, the day after the new moon. This is a moon about 24 degrees Aries square Jupiter and Pluto and Capricorn. It was a powerful thing. I remember at that time, that day, Koa and I went out rock climbing at a park here, which I almost said was Veterans Park, but it's not. But that came in, I think, probably because of the Aries Warrior Association. But Aries we associate with the rock climber too, and the adventurer, you know. And we went out rock climbing in this park where he used to meet for school groups, families, but of course schools are closed down. And it was so strange because of this time of, you know, here's another weirdness of doublespeak, social distancing. Here we're seeing other people in the park, but we're like distancing, you know, even like saying hello feels for some like you're like betraying their like safe bubble space because we're being conditioned to isolate. Well, one thing we want to speak about here today is how this month in the sacred astronomy of this new moon alignment is encouraging independence, but why isolationism is not true independence. So I will return there. So the Aries moon and that rugged mountain climber, you know, pioneer, warrior way, in square with Jupiter and Capricorn, and Jupiter and Pluto and Capricorn, which in some ways is like augmenting the fear and also showing us the benefic opportunity for us to evolve at this time, but not without tension. But that tension there was like, oh, well, you can go out in nature, but you have to be alone. To be independent is to be adverse or in conflict with the tribal awareness, if you will. Okay. New moon, visible. And let's look back to this chart once again of the no moon. Invisible. Blinded by the light of the sun, right? And certainly not occulting the solar disk, right? No eclipse at this time of the year because moon and sun are square the lunar nodes, right? And that's moon as far from, that's the moon on, as she always is, on her path of soul, as far from the path of spirit as possible. Also, moon Lilith. So I want to see where I go with the images here. Fine, we'll speak moon Lilith first. This new moon came at a time when moon was as far from sun as possible, right? The new moon met over here. Moon can join Lilith. Let's see that on the chart, right? So we'll speak about this square to the nodes as we move along, but let's focus here now. The sun will meet Lilith every year, and at that time, the new moon will align. And this is the micro moon. So if this was an eclipse and it's not an eclipse, if this was an eclipse, even if it was right with the nodes, we know it's not an eclipse because it's as far from the nodes as possible, right? About 90 degrees in front of the south node and behind the north node, although we can use behind and in front of in the other directions because the chart goes both ways. I don't want to get lost in that. As far from the nodes as possible, square the nodes. And also as far from the earth as possible. So let's say this was right at the nodes. This would still be the total eclipse alignment on the dragon's arrow, but it would be the furthest possibility from a total eclipse at that time, right? Because the moon this far from the earth means small moon, not enough to occult the solar disk. It also means slow moon. So this is the longest lunation of the year, I believe. I'm almost sure. Why can I say that? Because the moon, if we count our lunations beginning new moon to the next new moon, again, that's about 29 and a half days, 29.53059 days, okay? Well, if we start with a slow moon, why is this moon slow? Because moon is far from Earth, the source of gravitational or electromagnetical or whatever it is, love, you know? So slow, if we start with the slow moon, the moon at fullness, now opposite Lilith, is going to be a super moon, right? The moon's going to be close to Earth. The full moon's going to be here. So we're going to have a really big full moon this month. But we started slow, far, small, distant. Couldn't see it because the sun's there too. But we started slow, and then the next month will begin slow. So we go slow, fast, slow, right? So that makes a long month. Now there's another factor, because if you replace this with the sun and this with the earth, then we could speak about the earth's perihelion, which means far or close to sun, and aphelion, which means far from sun. Okay, so the earth is far from the sun in January around the new year in the Gregorian trip, and its earth is closest to the sun, or from Earth's point of view, sun is closest to the earth around July 4th, July 2nd, somewhere in there. So earth close to sun, from our point of view, sun close to earth, it's actually bigger sun, but we can't tell because the sun just blinds your eyes when you look, really. But that means faster earth, like the earth is moving fastest in January. So the sun moves fastest in our zodiac in January and slowest in July. Okay. Now, if the sun is moving fast, right, between new moon to the next new moon, right, it's 29 and a half days on average. So that means the sun, which moves about 1 degree per day on average, like the next new moon is going to be about 4 degrees Taurus, 3.5 Taurus. So the moon's got to go all the way around to where she is at the time of the new moon, and then another couple days to catch up to the sun. Well, if the sun's moving fast, then the moon's got to like spend a little more time to catch up. If the sun's moving slow, the moon will lap the sun in a shorter amount of time. So in that sense, just from the speed of sun in our skies, which of course is because of Earth's distance from the sun throughout the year, in January, when Earth is close to the sun and moving faster, so sun is moving fast in our zodiac, in January, the lunations tend to be longer because the sun's moving fast, so the moon has to go a little further to catch up to that fast sun. Whereas in July, when Earth is far from the sun, the lunations tend to be shorter because the sun's moving slow, so the moon doesn't have to go as far to catch up or lapse the sun, the slow sun, more quickly. Now the Earth circle is pretty circular, so that's actually participating a little bit less with the length of a lunation than this thing, because the moon's path about Earth's much more circular than this, but it is elliptical, and it's a pretty significant change. Again, like a fast moon here at perigee can move up to like almost 16 degrees per day. The average is about 13.3 degrees per day in the zodiac, and slow can be like down to 12 degrees per day. So if you start a lunation fast, and the next new moon begins fast, then you're going to have a generally fast month or shorter time between the new moons. In this case, we've begun with a slow moon. So it's a long lunation. I believe it's the longest lunation of the year. So let's go back here. I mean, does Aries want slow? How do I say this politely? Fuck no. Aries is massively fast. At the Aries time, look at the Cancer glyph. Let me stop this share and we'll just rap about that a bit, okay? There's a newness to Aries. Why I already described one of the reasons why this is because the Aries point is due east of the center of Earth where we are all connected. It is our global ascendant, our place of the rise. The east is the place of new beginnings. This western sky we're looking at, that's the end, right? That moon is going to set and go away. Things are born in the east, you know? The eastern sky always rises. And by the way, if you look and sit east for some hours at a time, what you'll notice is that stars that rise south of east go to the south, and stars that rise north of east go to the north. And in all moments time, there's an eternal fountain of youth that is the ram's horns. The sky literally diverges like the horns of the ram and then curls back upon itself to set in the west. This is why we associate the ram with this eastern sign. If you take the ground away, by the way, you get the Pisces glyph. Yeah, so both Pisces and Aries are east. And there's a few very important things about that cusp, 0 Aries. It's due east of the center of the earth and therefore new beginnings. And we like to begin, I think, quick. Why is Aries fast? Well, there's many reasons. So look at the Cancer glyph. The Cancer glyph speaks about many things, but one is the yearly travel of the sun. Solstice means the sun stops, or the sun stands still. That happens at solstice time, right? At the tropicos, which is a Greek word for turnaround, because the sun turns around. If you watch the sun set every evening or rise in the morning, what you will notice is that the sun does not rise in the same place every day, but rather that between December solstice and June solstice, regardless of where you live on Earth, the sunrise and the sunset between December solstice and June solstice, they're moving north, further north on the horizons every day. And then at June solstice, the sun stops and turns around and goes south for 6 months. It's the Cancer glyph. Well, the moon does this every month. She travels through the signs because the signs have places where they reside on the horizon. We have northern signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo. We have southern signs, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Now, the most northern degree of the zodiac is 0 Cancer, and the most southern degree of the zodiac is 0 Sagittarius. And that's where the sun or the moon or the signs are stopping to turn around at the tropicos. And in between, they're moving fastest on their daily journey on the horizons. This is a very key component of the sacred astronomy experience. Many of the ancients kept calendars like this. I'm keeping one here because I can see the sunset every day of the year. And when the sun sets on the mountain, it's 10 Pisces. And therefore also 20 Scorpio, 20 Libra, tale for another time. It's called Antiscia. Well, if you watch the moon set this evening, if the clouds allow, you'll see that she sets on the horizon in a very different place than where she sets tomorrow and the next day, and at a different time, significantly different time, which is why it's harder to do this with the moon than the sun. But the moon teaches us so quickly because she moves so quickly, 27.3 days around the zodiac. It's the sidereal month of the stars month, where the sun, of course, takes a year. Okay. So one of the reasons why Aries is so fast is it's right between these two stopping points. Yeah. So, I mean, like sun stands still at the solstices, but in between. Now that would speak to 0 Libra as much as 0 Aries. The equinox points are where the sun is moving fast on the horizon. I can just say the equinox points move fast on both the eastern and the western horizon. So why would we say Aries is so fast? Do we say that about Libra? Well, fools rush in. But this comes to like now a northern hemisphere specific trip. Crooked and straight signs And without getting too deep into the why, let me just say that from the northern hemisphere, 0 Aries is the point of the tropical zodiac that rises most quickly. We have 12 signs and 24 hours in a day. So we divide 24 hours by 12 and we say that each sign rises in 2 hours. Have you been taught that? Remember my warning earlier about getting lost in the averages and losing natural happening in averages? In Seattle, where I used to live, I clocked this on the charts. And this is true every day of the year. It doesn't matter where the sun is. In Seattle, 48 degrees from the equator, where the seasons are more extreme and signs of short and long ascension are more extreme than they are where I now live in the Bay, closer to the equator. In Seattle, Aries and Pisces rise in like 47 minutes, which obviously is significantly less than the 2-hour average. Whereas Virgo and Libra require almost 3 hours each to rise. Okay, so from a northern hemisphere perspective, Aries is new beginnings for the whole world because it is due east of the center of Earth. It is the ascendant for us all. The tropical zodiac is a directional phenomenon. Many of you have tuned into my teachings on this. There's a video up on GeminiBrett.com that's called The Very Real Astronomy of the Tropical Zodiac, where you can learn that. I've actually improved, I think, the way that I'm expressing it, and will improve more. I need to create some more animations, and I'll probably end up updating that video. Or you can study Sacred Astronomy with me. You'll find some free classes at GeminiBrett.com. But there's also intensives. There's one coming up for OPA, for Organization for Professional Astrology, at their Zion retreat, which is now us meeting in significant retreat, of course, because we are isolated by this weird shelter in place thing because of coronavirus and fear of it. So we'll be meeting virtually. And the good news for me in that regard is I'll be able to reach a wider audience. So, and it's not expensive. So go check out OPA, Organization for Professional Astrology. You can link to this from GeminiBrett.com at the events page, or go to OPA astrology.org and sign up for part 2 of the coming retreat and do Sacred Astronomy for astrologers with me. And I'll show you all sorts of these things with amazingly beautiful animations and illustrations, but also guided sky experiences. So that's the part of the thing that I'll be missing to teach in person. Like a lot of what I transmit, we do outside on the big screen. But I'm really looking forward to actually creating like audios that you can listen to outside that will guide you through constructing your sundial and your medicine wheel and learning to see the midheaven and engaging with what you see in the sky and then bringing that back to the chart. I think on an individual level, like we can more deeply experience it. In a group, it's nice to have a leader there, but we can also be distracted just by the many hearts and minds, etc. Okay, how did I get there? Come back from Plugland. Right. So we were just speaking about Aries being fast. Okay. So for one thing, it is the ram's horn. It is the Eastern sign. And therefore, I mean, think about when Easter happens. It's when the sun is east of the earth, friends. Okay. Passover, the sun is passing the ecliptic at that time, or the celestial equator at that time. And I'm getting more dorky than I wish to be. All right. The equinoxes are the nodes of the Earth-Sun relationship. And the Aries equinox is the north node of the Sun-Earth relationship. I can say it that way. And I'll leave that there for now. So new beginnings, because the sun at March equinox, or the Aries ingress of the tropical zodiac, is due east of the center of the earth, the place where we are all connected, and fast, because Aries is the fastest place of the zodiac's travel on the horizons. And for the northern hemisphere, because Aries rises like this instead of Libra, which rises like this, Aries rises very quickly, like less than an hour for most northern hemisphere experiences, where the average, we say, is 2 hours per sign on the rise. Aries is what's called a crooked sign versus Libra, a very straight sign. Now that's a northern hemisphere thing, I should say. Most of what I'm saying is very global. Okay. All right. So let's get back into these charts. Does Aries like slow? So hopefully now I've offered some sacred astronomy reasons, right? Not just like, no, because Aries is the warrior, and I want to tune into why these signs are these things, not just because my teacher taught me or I read it in every book, or even I've experienced it in people. I want to do that for sure, but I'm after the roots of the rules, and we see them reflected in nature. Good. Aries likes fast, no doubt about it. You know, well, this is a slow moon. This is the slowest month of the year. This is like the slowest possible Aries lunation. And the moon is, because the moon is so far from the earth. Moon conjoined true black moon Lilith means far moon, slow moon. But what is the moon? There's a talk I did recently that's not at GeminiBrett.com yet, but will be there. There is a talk there that's a little bit more condensed, if you will. That's called Circle, Crescent, and Cross, that you can dig. But you can also go on YouTube. I did a presentation for EA Zoom meeting some time ago in February this year called The Emerald Tablets of Hermes and the Path of Incarnation, where I drop deep into my own personal cosmology, which is resulting from my experience with the sky, from my study of sacred geometry, from the Emerald Tablets, and from musical harmony and the other sciences of the quadrivium, like number magic. So in brief, I just want to say that in my cosmology, it resonates with what we learn about these elements of our glyphs. The circle is spirit, the crescent is soul, and the cross is matter. Now, Earth is the cross of matter inside the circle of spirit. We are spiritual beings having an experience in body, okay? And we can say much more about that. The sun is pure spirit. As I said earlier, I mean, the sun is great mystery. The sun illuminates Earth, but hides the sky. This is why the 12th house is hidden things. When the sun rises, the star goes away. We can't tell where the sun is in the zodiac, okay? We can by seeing where it sets on the horizon, how long the midday shadow is, and all sorts of things that I teach in my sacred astronomy classes. The ancient approach, which is amazing. But I can look at the moon and say, oh, there's moon. Like tonight, I'll go look at the moon in Aldebaran. Last night, I saw Venus, moon, Aldebaran. And it's like, oh, I see moon just ingressed Gemini. And Venus is about to. She's going to enter the sacred hoop, you know? It's good to know the sky. Well, I can't do that with the sun. I'll go blind, at least get burned, without ever seeing what stars the sun is aligned to. I can look at the stars that rise before the sun does and say, oh, that means she's a little further along there. I can look at the stars that first appear in the sunset sky and say, oh, the sun's about to get there, so the sun must be there. I can measure my midday shadow. I can look at where the sun's setting but you know, I kind of need the earth to really know where the sun is, which is a beautiful teaching. But the sun is spirit. It's a great mystery. No idea. And I prefer the ancient cosmology about what the sun is to that which I was taught in school. I was taught the sun is a nuclear furnace in the sky. I like the old image, which is the stars are holes in the heavens where the one light comes through. And that the sun is the closest one, you know? So here in matter, we exist with a veil over us, hiding us from the one and only light. And there's holes in that tapestry. And the big hole, because we're close to it, is the sun. So the sun is the local emanation for the one and only light. It is spirit, the one and only thing, the indivisible. Soul, S-O-L, but I like to say moon puts the U in soul, the U in soul, because the moon, who I will call soul, as the glyph shows. What do I mean by soul? Not some little division of the one and only thing. We're not little pieces. We are, as Hermes says, an adaptation. He says, as all things have been, and arose from one by the mediation of one. so all things have their birth in this one thing by adaptation. You are an adaptation of spirit. You are a reflection, a translation of spirit, not some little piece of it. And the moon gives you the gift of forgetting this when you come in. The moon reflects the one light in every moment time in an absolutely unique way that will never repeat to a place on earth that is experiencing that unique energy in a unique way. Your chart will never be seen ever, ever, ever again. And I actually don't have to look beyond the moon and the sun in the chart to show you that. You are unique. You are a unique reflection, adaptation of spirit. You are a miracle. Spirit reflected itself through soul to earth, just as Diana delivers the sun's birth. Why? Because spirit is everything and therefore nothing it cannot grow. It reflects itself through soul to matter. The Pythagorean said, when the one becomes two, then three and four. We cannot have a soul without reflecting spirit into an embodied experience. Because here in space and time, or at least in the appearance of it, in matter, we can grow. How? Feel. This is why Earth can be so hard. Because of this amazing mechanism called the heart, which resides in the body. When you feel, you heal. When you heal, you grow. When you know, and when you know, you grow. Hold on one second, friends. I don't know. Something important sounds like it's happening out there, but something I think kind of important is happening here. So let's just continue. We'll start wrapping it up. So what is it for the soul to be far from matter? You see, because that's what's happening at this new moon. Yeah? Moon is far from Earth. How do I know? Because moon is conjoined true black moon Lilith. This is why Lilith shows up on all of my charts now, because she tells me more about the moon, more about the soul, more about the unique reflection of soul, of one light by soul, of spirit by soul to earth. So what is it for the soul to be far from matter? You see, these are ones that don't necessarily want to rush into incarnating. So Lilith is a very interesting mythos. I'm not going to speak so much about this, but I will say that, you know, it's a patriarchal fucking presentation, pardon my language. And yet there's something about this one who ran away from the garden, Earth, right? And keeps babies from incarnating. Let me say it that way. It's a little more euphemistically than euthanistically. Well, I see Lilith often in miscarriage, in abortion, in stillbirth charts, things like this, in divorces and separations. And yet I sit with many women who have been through that initiation where nobody's there to help. You're so alone, even if you have a supporting partner who've been through the initiation of abortion. And maybe it's years later where they're like, oh my God, that was like a bigger deal than I thought at the time. At the time I was just traumatized and scared or like unwise. And now it means this. And I'm having dreams of this being, whatever it may be, and I can see that that being is guiding, you know, an awakening from some place that's outside of this garden called Earth. And so what I mean to suggest by this is that some souls get so close to this place of matter, close enough to really bring dynamic and powerful effects and experiences without getting trapped here. It's kind of a genius move, actually. And I feel that with the moon Lilith. But Aries wants to come in, wants to rush in. Look, every sign of the zodiac is a reaction to the one that precedes it. If Pisces had its way, we would never incarnate. We would experience the truth of oneness. You are spirit. We are not little pieces of one going back there. We are that. We've just forgotten it. Why? Because spirit itself cannot grow, and yet it will never stop doing so. Because spirit has reflected itself through soul into matter, into the miracle called you. And you can feel and heal and know and grow, and your growth is the growth to the one and only thing. Sorry, sweetie. The deer ate the plants for our new garden. Interesting, just as I'm speaking about the gardens. Right. Time to build that fence. So let's speaking about like fencing ourselves off, because that's alive in this time of our fear. In some ways, that's aligned in the importance of the Aries sign, which is a sign of self. Because Pisces is kind of the release of self to return to the oneness of spirit. And it's like devotion and it's ideal in that dream. And Aries must react to that one who says, I am the one, and say, well, no, we'll never incarnate. Like, come back onto the wheel, focus on one thee. Who am I? What are the radii of the circle? You see, as the radius grows, the whole thing does. So this is the one. This is one thee. That's called you. And if you do you to the best of your ability, you grow. One thee grows. The radius, the radii grows. The whole thing does. So if you do you, spirit keeps growing. And it will never stop growing because here you are. And in times of crisis, we can like shut down and choose not to grow, or we can really respond. And the way that we're being asked to respond is through focusing on the strength of self. Look, if you are a reflection of the one and only thing, if your growth is a gift of growth, do you. Every node of this web is significantly important. You are the great miracle, and your growth is the way that spirit grows. How can you grow right now? How in this time, in the isolation of soul, are we being encouraged to come into the true independence of insulation, so that when we re-merge with the tribe and with the collective and with the energy of the one heart, that we are even stronger in our gnosis of who we are and can contribute greater on that personal level to the growth of the whole thing? That, to me, is the most important story of what's alive for us right now. And I see it in two ways. The moon at this time, because she's conjoined true black moon Lilith, moon is far from earth. The soul is far from matter, but moving slowly, kind of checking it out, thinking I'm going to go back in there. Right? Look at the time of the new moon, plying to Lilith. Shortly after, it got as far from the sun as possible, and now starts coming back. And the full moon will be very close to the earth. But this other type of separation remains true, because the moon also was square to the nodes. From Earth's point of view, is as far from the path of the sun as possible at the bendings. So here we see this illustration of a new moon with the moon at northern latitude, north of the sun, applying to what's called her northern bending, which is square to the nodes, 90 degrees from the nodes. And at that place where moon in her maximum northern latitude bends back down to cross to the southern place at the south node, the crossing point. And then 90 degrees from there will be at the southern bending, where moon will bend back up. So this is where the new moon met on the 24th of March, the Aries new moon. Moon was far from Earth, and moon down here, right, was as far south of the sun's path as possible. So not only is soul distance from matter, soul is also distant from spirit. Well, good. Why? Because like Aries, I'll talk about this another time. Let me say, okay, actually, no, let's do that. But I'll finish the point. Like Aries, we are asked to focus on self. Selfness is not selfish. An isolation culture, which we're experiencing like profoundly right now, to be shown where we are living typically without thinking of it. Independence through isolation conditioning is a perversion. You know, you are being taught by your corrupt culture that if you ask somebody for help, you are weak and unprepared and not strong on yourself. That's isolation. No, insulation. As we are awakening and opening as intuitive, empathic beings and really starting to reconnect deeply once again, not only through the technology of the World Wide Web, that's a training wheel to remind us of the true way to dance, which is the empathic connection of the heart, which we all share. We've just been asked to forget for a time. It's starting to come back online, and it's a tricky thing, because if you feel everyone's hearts, you feel the weight of our collective suffering. We have to like dose that on the other way with the weight of the beauty and lightness of our collective joy. But that those scales feel very out of balance. So if you're like tidal waves in that ocean, we just say no and isolate and shut down. I mean, it's like, you know, many of us have become hermits because of this. And so this training is not one, you know, it will be experienced if we just like fall prey to it in a way of isolation, but it's opportunity for us to come into insulation. If we focus on the power of self, if we now in our apparent isolation choose insulation by saying, this is who I am, this is who I choose to be on the other side of this thing, this is where I've been, this is how I've been operating, I love some of it, I don't love some of it, and the stuff that I don't love is now getting composted into rich soil where the new seeds get planted so I can be the new me in the new world that I dream forth consciously, powerfully, because me in self, me as one thee, have the opportunity through my growth to grow the whole thing. I'm not a division. I'm not some isolated piece of the thing. I'm an insulated reflection of the entire thing. And so here at this time, we find soul, moon, far from matter, earth. We find from Earth's point of view, from the point of view of matter, soul, moon, far from spirit, sun. You're being reminded, welcomed into the reflections of how unique you are and how important you are. So release this idea that egolessness is the one and only way. This is a time for you to get deep into the me-go of the thing. Aries, friends, is not some selfish sign, as too many sadly teach. Selfness is not selfish. The warrior is here for the team. The pioneer, the scout, they do that for the team. You think those that run ahead on the path and to see what dangers lie ahead are not doing this for their crew? And if he stepped on the moon, it wasn't just a small step for one man, it was a giant leap for mankind. When she climbs to the peak of Everest, we all did. All of the cardinal signs are a service to others. Aries, very importantly, is this. They just do this according to their element, and fire does this in a very different way. This is the square, then water, Cancer, or earth, Capricorn would choose to. Okay. So the snaking of the moon about the path of the sun creates another system of quadrants, which we see in, you know, the directional zodiac, which you might experience as the 4 seasons. We see in so many ways, okay? Modalities. But here we see in lunar latitude. I'll be teaching a course about this Wednesday, which will eventually find its way to my site. That's one thing that I'm doing in this time of apparent isolation, to come into insulation, to like really start sharing some of the things that I'm finding in my engagement with the sky in such a way that other people can see it, you know, through downloads on the website and that. All right, anyway, we're looking at a kind of random chart here. It's fun. Pisces moon. Pisces moon reflecting Libra light. This clearly is a chart for an autumnal equinox with moon and sun and Antishya signs. This moon has southern latitude because she is in the zodiac in a degree further than where the south node is held. And this moon is not yet to the southern bending. So this is a moon south going south. And then there's a quadrant of moons, southern latitude, but coming back to cross to the northern latitude, the north node, and then north going north, and the extreme north at the bending, and then north going south, and south going south, south going north, north going north, north going south, which is why these letters are here. You know, one way thing I'll suggest about this, and it's important because, you know, again, like this recent happening, this recent new moon was at the southern bending. Let me just show that real quick, and then we'll try to zoom through some of these things. How do I know? Because here's the south node. So south latitude starts there, and the southern bending is at 3 degrees and 40 minutes Aries, square to the south and north node. And so this is the moon who's reached her southern extreme and is coming back up. I mean, basically in this moment of the new moon, you see, 3 degrees, 40 minutes Aries. And then still, so on the way back from the extreme distance from spirit, if you will, the southern place, and on the way towards getting more distance from Earth and then coming back. So these are like far away, far out journeys, you see? And so that's that insulated selfness, the soul like exploring its uniquity and the importance of that. Now, we saw an image before. I guess I'll go here. Here's a new moon with the moon at northern latitude, which from the North Hemisphere's point of view is above the sun in our sky, and from the Southern Hemisphere's point of view, below the sun in the sky. So we used to call these descending and ascending nodes. That's the Northern Hemisphere experience of the South and North node, respectively. But in the Southern Hemisphere, the moon goes closer to the heavens from the sun's path at the South node. It's opposite. So they changed from descending and ascending node to South node and North node. And you know, in some ways, it would seem that they should be delineated in opposite ways between hemispheres for that reason. But, and this is why the tropical zodiac remains true despite the seasonal opposition between Earth's hemispheres, the Earth, because the sun is moving through space. And we are moving generally towards the star Vega, which never sets at our North Pole, and away from the star Sirius, which never rises at our North Pole and never sets at the South Pole. In other words, Earth is literally moving northward through the heavens. And therefore, where we see a planet like the moon cross its north node, it is literally moving towards the future, towards where we are going. And when we see a planet like the moon, who does every month cross her south node, we are seeing it dip back into the well of the past. So at the southern bending, it's kind of the deepest place of where we've been. So there's something in this plug of go to GeminiBrett.com and take some of these free Sacred Astronomy teachings, and then go to events and sign up for the deep Sacred Astronomy teaching of the Zion retreat that's coming up. But I'll just offer these images of lunar latitude. And the one that I'll tune into right now is where this new moon was, where we are beginning this very important lunation, which is if moon is between southern bending and north node, the moon is south latitude moving north. The soul is devoted to sprouting ancient wisdom through the soil of the present. That's one of the most important scenes of this time, especially given the truth that the south node and so many planets are in the sign of Capricorn, the voice of the earth, which we have forgotten how to hear. And we are being reminded of this. And we want to come into family, which in tribe energies, but sometimes that says you're not allowed to be unique. No, you are the black sheep, which is so true for so many of us astrologers, you know? No, well, we've been tuning into the ancient wisdom, and now we are here to bring that to the family, bring that to the support of retrieving ancient wisdom for the sake of greater community. So in this time of apparent isolation, may we choose insulation. Remember the important that every soul is a unique reflection of the one and only thing, that self matters. And that as we choose to grow one thee, as we choose to grow in an insulated, unique, individual way, the whole thing grows. So that's true on a soul spirit level, regardless. And we're being reminded that when we choose to be us and to give the gifts that we are here to give, this is the way that Earth will live and thrive in a new and beautiful truth, that we are feeling the labor pains of this birth to come. And if we choose to intentionally engage with the growth of one thee, the one grows, and we will all experience a more beautiful truth of tribal family on the other side of the thing. But thanks for tuning into this long dance through the sacred astronomy of one chart. You can find me at GeminiBrett.com. If you'd like to give a little something back for what you may have received here, you will find a donate button there. More importantly, you will find a work with me page where you can book a session. So I'd love to tune into the song of your soul and show you what one astrologer hears in your notes. You'll find at the homepage and on the work with me page a special that I've been running, which is a sun, moon, and earth special for $33 if you want to just tune in quickly, or longer sessions. That's of course the greatest support. People who are afraid about money in the world right now, and we need to have conversations about soul even more right now. It's part of this two-edged sword that we're encouraging. So there's space in my schedule and there's time, and I hope that you will make that less apparently so, and that we can have a journey into space together. Thanks again for participating with this one. This is your friendly astronaut, Gemini Brett, signing off. I will see you in space.